we really don't hear much from the mainstream media about just what a threat Hezbollah actually is inside the Western Hemisphere and even inside the United States. Hezbollah's covert operations in the Western Hemisphere, which have been going on for a long time, the biggest reason why Hezbollah is engaged in the Western Hemisphere is to make money. That's probably one of the reasons why we haven't seen more attacks from Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere, not because they're not here, but because they don't want to upset the hundreds of millions of dollars a year they make from businesses in the Western Hemisphere. It's like they're keeping their business interests separate from their military interests so that if the military interests get destroyed, their businesses won't be affected that much and they'll still have the ability to rebuild. And this is why you need to know about this, because Hezbollah might be defeated on the battlefield sometime in the near future, but they're not yet defeated on the economic battlefield, because that takes place between Latin America, the United States, and Africa. Let me explain how that works. Did you know that Hezbollah is one of the largest buyers and sellers of used cars on the planet? The Hezbollah organization has a bunch of front companies that go to the United States. They wire like $300 million a year to the US. Then they take that money and they go buy tons of used cars across the United States and in Latin America and other places. They then put those used cars on shipping containers, put them on ships, send them over to Africa, and then proceed to sell them in Africa. And you might say, wait a minute, why are they going to all that trouble? Used cars are one of those things. They're quite valuable. One used car is worth quite a bit of money. And the purchase and sale of them is not heavily regulated by any stretch. For example, if I just decided to sell my car someday in the United States, I don't own a car in the United States, but if I had a car in the United States and I wanted to sell it, I just put it in the newspaper. Some guy shows up and says, hey, you take $500 less. And I go, yeah, okay, sure. They buy my car. They give me the money. I sign the back of the title. They take that title and they don't even have to go in my state and get it retitled. They could get it retitled in a different state, or they could just forget about it, put that car on a ship and send it to Africa where the title doesn't matter. They buy the cars in the United States. They put them on a ship. They send them to Benin, of all places, and they sell them over there at a profit. It's also a cash transaction over there. Then that profit is then sent to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, where do they get the $300 million to start with to buy these cars? That's where they're heavily involved in drug trafficking around the world. So the vast majority of their drugs, they buy drugs in Venezuela and Colombia. They then ship them to the United States. They take the profits from those drugs. That's dirty money. It's virtually all cash. They then get that money over to, different places, okay? One thing that they could do with that money, though, is they could just keep it in the United States and buy used cars with it. Because again, used cars, they can buy a $20,000, $25,000, $35,000, $45,000 used car and pay cash for that thing. And all that dirty money just became an asset, a hard asset. Then when they sell that asset in Africa, it's not traceable by the United States, but that money, that cash they get in Africa is cleaner than the money that they use to buy the car with. They then send that to Hezbollah, and Hezbollah can use it for whatever they want. They can also use it to wire right back to the United States to buy more cars. So it's a big circle. So this is the way that they have operated for years. And Venezuela is a willing partner in this, both the drug narco trafficking and the money laundering, because there are many people in high levels of government in Venezuela who are actually Lebanese. A lot of people don't know that, but there are more than 500,000 people in Venezuela who have Lebanese ancestry. It's maybe about 2% of the population at this point. It's one thing if they want to get drugs into the United States, there's established routes for that. That's easy enough. If they wanted to get drugs in, that's easy enough. But imagine if they wanted to get people into the United States, as in Hezbollah operatives. It's even easier. They take those guys and they take them to Venezuela. They sheep dip them. The Venezuelan government will just give them a Venezuelan passport, make them instant Venezuelan citizens. They don't appear on any biometric database or anything like that anywhere in the world. So there's no way to check to see if they're actually Venezuelan or what. And then they just walk those guys right through the Darien Gap. They come right through Panama here, and they head north up to the United States, and they walk right in, present themselves as Venezuelan refugees to the police, to the border police, and those guys get allowed to stay in the United States. There are millions of Venezuelans in the United States right now. Now, Hezbollah has actually done more than just use the Western Hemisphere for money making and human trafficking, drug trafficking, all that. Hezbollah has used the region mostly in what they call the tri-border area, which is Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay. And they've had just a hub of activity there. They've even had training camps. We're talking legit, actual terrorist training camps in that region. And of course, they've had things like that in Venezuela. There are some rumors that Hezbollah has put camps together in the kind of remote area between Venezuela and Colombia. I've gotten very close to those areas. And the closer you get in Colombia to Venezuela, especially in the northern part, the more you will see a lot of Muslims. You'll see lots of mosques. You'll see lots of people in headdresses, women in burqas, things like that. And it is not like something that's hidden. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been there, traveled out there, and I've seen it happening. How do we know that these guys are actually doing this? Let me go over some notable arrests and indictments, okay? First of all, in 2011, there was a guy named Ayman Juma, and he was arrested for shipping cocaine to the United States and laundering over $250 million in those proceeds for the Zeta cartel and then through the Zeta cartel to Hezbollah. And it was proven, and he was indicted. That's from the Jewish Policy Center. Now, there was another guy in 2019 named Qasim Tajuddin who was sentenced to 5 years and forfeited $50 million for his role in a money laundering scheme that benefited Hezbollah. That also comes from the Jewish Policy Center. There's another guy in 2019, Ali Karani, who was convicted of gathering intelligence on U.S. targets for Hezbollah's Islamic Jihad organizations, including locations in New York City. So are there sleeper cells in the United States? You bet there are. And what are they doing? They're collecting intelligence for future attacks. They are preparing the ground in the United States for future terrorist attacks on U.S. citizens. There is no question that is happening. Samar El-Debek is another guy in 2017 who was charged with providing material support to Hezbollah and conducting surveillance of potential U.S. targets, which included, get this, the embassy right here in Panama. So Hezbollah was looking at striking at U.S. embassies in Latin America, including not just Panama, but also in Argentina and in Brazil. They actually did conduct a terror attack on the embassy in Argentina. They were implicated in major terrorist attacks in Argentina back in the 90s, 1992 and 1994. They bombed the Israeli embassy and another Israeli Mutual Aid Association community center, which resulted in more than 100 people dead and hundreds of other casualties. In recent years, authorities have continued to uncover Hezbollah's activities in Latin America. For instance, in 2023, just last year, Brazilian police arrested 2 people with suspected links to Hezbollah and accused them of planning attacks on Jewish targets in Brazil. So because of this, several Latin American countries have designated Hezbollah as a terrorist organization, including Argentina, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, Paraguay, Panama, and others. These designations are meant to make it easier for authorities to disrupt financial networks and operational capabilities in this region. Yes, they are in Latin America and they're in the United States, without a doubt. I just released a book called Death of Civilization that will help you be more prepared in the event of violence, loss of civility, I like to call it, in the event of election-related violence or protests that get out of hand, mob violence in your region. Even if you live in a suburban or even rural area, these things could be coming your direction, and it helps to be united as a community. So what the book is really about, the first part of the book talks about how civilization is dying in the United States and talks about the reasons why or what's causing it. But the second half of the book is what you can do about that. One of the reasons that civilization is dying in America is because we aren't civilized with our neighbors anymore. Most people don't even know their neighbors. They don't even know who they are. They don't know what they do. They don't know anything about their families or anything. We might wave at them when we're walking our dog or something like that, but that's about it. And if you don't know the people in your neighborhood, that is one of the foundational building blocks of civilization. And so you should know the people in your neighborhood. And so the Death of Civilization talks about how you can do something about that. So please go to chuckholton.com. Just become a supporter over there. You can get a free download of that book and my book about how to help your church start a crisis preparedness team called The Grace Project. You can get both of those books by becoming a supporter over at chuckholton.com and a lot more. There are other benefits like access to the movies that I've put out, the documentaries. I've got 65 documentaries. I've got 10 other books in print. And we just had another meeting today about how we can make it even better for members over at chuckholton.com. So you can support me, keep me in the field, and copies of that book by going to chuckholton.com. Okay, let's talk about why this is happening. Why has it been so easy for Hezbollah to get such a foothold in the United States? There are likely thousands of Hezbollah operatives in the United States just waiting to be told what to do. Or they're not just waiting, they're actually preparing. They're doing reconnaissance on targets. They're making preparations for a massive multi-cell terror attack in the United States. I actually have made several videos. I made one documentary about a place in Arkansas, just outside of Little Rock, that is helping law enforcement prepare for just such a scenario. It's a training center called the Darcy. It's called Darcy, the Direct Action Resource Center, DARC. And what Darcy does is they bring together police from all around the country. They throw them together in there in a massive multi-cell terror attack scenario and then force them to respond to this. And what they find is that the first night, it's an absolute clown show. Why? Because these cops, they all come from different jurisdictions and different police departments. So they have different standard operating procedures, different tactics, techniques, and procedures, and different frequencies on their radios, different call signs. They don't know how to work together at all. And that's one thing that terrorists have taken advantage of in the past. The Darcy organization put together this training facility to help police learn to deal with those things by standardizing their tactics, techniques, and procedures. Standardizing the way they talk on the radio, standardizing the kind of radios they have. How do you work together with federal, state, and local police all converging on the scene of a massive multi-cell attack. It's a 5-day training thing that they do, and they put these guys through their paces, and they learn a ton about how to do that, okay? God bless you. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Take care.